Hey everyone, Art Burns here. I really hope you're all having a great day today. I hope that life is treating you well, and as I like to say, I hope that you are treating you well. And this is absolutely of utmost importance, because when we treat ourselves well, when we're sort of kind to ourselves, forgiving of ourselves, and supportive of ourselves, this opens up the ability to be truly aware, right? And that's what I talk about a lot here, right? This awareness that we build through doing some basic practices, right? Whether it's formal meditation, sitting in a quiet and still place, and just not to say that you have to have a silent place to meditate, because honestly there is no such thing, right? But when we quiet ourselves and we quiet our mind and we quiet our body, and we allow ourselves to sit in a stillness, right? What we do is we gain an awareness, and we gain an awareness of all the different things that are going on with us, right? Including an awareness of when we are not being completely supportive of ourselves, and when we're kind of, maybe being a little harder on ourselves than we would be on someone else. And we then can start to understand how this is not serving us, right? And this gives us the power to choose to be more compassionate towards ourselves, right? But in addition to this, the awareness that we build, you hear me talk a lot about the connection between the thoughts that we have, the emotions that the thoughts create, the sensations in our body that those emotions create, and the way the thoughts are influenced by those sensations. How this whole thing works in a spiral, in a cycle, right? However, it's more like a pool ball, right? That is spinning in all kinds of different directions. Because sometimes, right? Sometimes the emotion creates the thought, and sometimes the thought creates a physical sensation. It's not a very sort of clearly delineated separation between the three things, is what I'm trying to say. And as we develop awareness, right? And again, you only develop the awareness through looking, right? Through practicing looking at what's going on, right? Whether it's looking at the emotions, or looking at the physical sensations, or looking at the thoughts that are happening, right? When we sit in this stillness of meditation, right? Formally or informally, what we do essentially is we step back, and we kind of unidentify and sort of detach ourselves from the flow of this process that's happening, right? And so we can kind of step back and watch it happen, like kind of in front of us, as opposed to happening with us inside of it, if that makes sense. And this is one of the things I always, I every time I teach someone, every time, the very first lesson that I give anybody, and this is in my webinars, this is in every conversation I have about mindfulness, is that it requires practice. And this is one of the reasons why the practice is so required, right? Because I can't really put into words. I mean, there's been hundreds of books written about this, and they all say it in a different way, but you can't truly understand what I mean about that sort of stepping back and letting this happen in front of you, or getting this sort of third person detachment, or this non-identification with the thoughts, the emotions, and the sensations. You really can't understand it until you do it, right? I often tell people it's like riding a bicycle, right? Like, I could tell you all about a bicycle. I could give you hours and hours and hours of talking about how a bicycle works, and how the momentum and the balance and the wheels and the physics of it and everything. I could tell you all about it, right? But I can't ever describe to you how it feels when you finally strike that balance and feel the momentum and get the sense of riding a bike, right? I can't tell you that. You have to ride a bike. If you're never going to get on the bicycle, you're never going to learn how to truly ride that bicycle in that kind of, on that kind of level, right? And so meditation and mindfulness are very, very similar to that, right? Until you get into the meditation, until you start doing it. And yeah, just like riding a bike, in the beginning you're going to need training wheels. You're going to need somebody to guide you through it. You're going to need somebody to kind of, hold your hand and keep you kind of, in this balance, right? Because it's hard to do it on your own, right? But eventually you do find a way to do it on your own. And once you do that, now you start to really feel it, right? And as you do it more and more and more, you start to really sense the kind of things that I'm talking about, which is, again, the best way I can describe it is like stepping back from your thoughts and seeing your thoughts happen in front of you almost, right? It's kind of, and again, that's just the way that I visualize it. I'm sure you could, describe it in many, many different ways, but the point is that when we're doing this, right, we start to see how the thoughts, not only how the thoughts influence the emotions, which influence the sensations, which influence the thoughts, right? We can see that process very, very clearly, and that's a really, really important thing to understand, or really helpful thing to understand, because we start to get a sense of how, why we wind up in a certain emotional place, and we understand how, how our bodies are feeling at any given moment. We start understanding, like, okay, why is it that I'm in this kind of, thought process, right? But even on another level from that, we can start to see how the thoughts themselves, right? Even if it's not like a very strong emotional, experience, we can see how the thoughts themselves start to influence each other. Right? I'll give you an example of the cycle that I talk about, right? So and speaking of cycles and bicycles, I'm a pretty avid cyclist out here in Denver. I mean, not that I'm, I don't have like the fancy clothes and the, big expensive bike or anything like that, but I love to bike ride everywhere, and that's how I get around, right? And so a couple of years ago, I bought a new bike, because I wanted to really commit to riding every day. So I wanted to have a reliable bike, and I really picked out a bike that I love, and I really, really love my bike. So I bought the bike at this one store that I found, and there was one mechanic at the store that I really, really like. He and I got along. We were like really talking on deep levels. We have, similar sort of backgrounds and stuff. So it was a really good, kind of very quality relationship that I developed with this dude, right? And so I bought the bike from this place, and I would take it to them to be serviced when I needed to, and don't need that much service on a bicycle. That's the beautiful thing. You can do most of it yourself, and it's very sort of low maintenance, as long as you take care of very little things. But anyway, this is not a podcast about bicycles, but anyway, there was something that was going on with my bicycle, right? And there was like a noise that it was making, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out where this noise was coming from, right? And so I took it back to the bike shop, right? But the guy that I got along with wasn't there for whatever reason. He was not there at, like, on a few different, like, the days that I was able to go or the days he had off, right? So I always had to, kind of, work with this other mechanic there. And I mean, I have a lot of compassion for the guy and everything, and I know that he was, in his own way, he was doing what he felt was appropriate and all that, but he really was kind of like, he had this sort of attitude like, well, I don't know what it is, so I can't help you. Kind of, almost like, I don't think anything's wrong with it, so go somewhere else, kind of thing, And it really, like, at that point in my life, a couple of years ago, I had a lot of different things that were going on, and so I was probably at a little bit more of a a kind of maybe a little bit of a higher stress kind of time in my life, right? And so I remember as I was riding my bike, I would hear this noise, right? And I would then think about that guy, right? And I didn't notice this in real time. I noticed in hindsight, right? But what I would realize is that all of a sudden I would be riding my bike and I'd be like squeezing the handlebars and feeling this sort of like kind of an animosity that I was feeling in my body, right? And this animosity, I was like, I was just then, of course, I was thinking about all the bad stuff in my life, right? I would think about like things that, like an argument I had with my wife like 3 days before, or some business problem that I was having, or some, at the time I was going through some legal issues with another business that I used to own, and so that would come into my mind, and all of a sudden I was just filled with all of this negativity. And I was on my bicycle in a beautiful day. There's no reason I was feeling all that, right? What I came to realize, and this is how that cycle happens, right? I hear the noise, I think about that mechanic that let me down, right? Now I feel an emotion, like I'm maybe it's anger. Let's just call it anger. I'm sure there's a lot of different emotions that are involved, but let's call it anger, right? And then that anger gets me in this like tightness in my chest, right? Now that tightness in my chest then, makes me think about, again, maybe it's not the bicycle and the mechanic anymore, but now I'm thinking about a problem with my business, or I'm thinking about a thing with my wife, and it just became a cycle as I cycled, right? And it just became this, sort of self-fulfilling and self-fueling, and took its own momentum to the point where, and I was able to measure it because I was on a bike trail, so like 2 miles, 3 miles later, I was a completely different person. Like I was in a completely different mental and emotional state than when I started. And that's when I would realize, like, wow, look at you. And that's when it started to occur to me about this cycle. I realized, well, wow, yeah, it's the noise on my bicycle. And that, kind of started this whole process. But again, if I don't have the awareness, and if I'm not practiced in seeing that, well, then I would never notice it. I would never realize that this is what happened. I would just be in a bad mood, right? And I would just be, thinking about some angry stuff, and being in that place, right? And that's unfortunately how I used to live my life. I used to live my life every single day being in that place. But now I realize how much that place is determined by the little moments of thinking and emotion and sensation, right? And now I've gotten my awareness to such a degree that I can actually see the thoughts themselves, right? Before it gets to be this big, huge, bad mood kind of thing, right? I can see that, like when I'm in the shower, for instance, or I'm brushing my teeth, or I'm, anywhere where those the mind wandering is likely to happen, right? Which it happens, and it's okay, but the thing is I realize that it's happened, and that's the key, right? As long as we can see that it's happened and kind of bring it back, and notice that when the mind wanders, this is what happens, right? The mind wanders from this noise on the bicycle to all of a sudden everything that's wrong in your life, right? And that's when you start feeling the stress, right? You get very, amped up, and now you're in a place again, like I talked about yesterday. I'm no longer present with what's happening. Now I'm in this emotional dark land that who knows what's going to happen, right? When I get a phone call, or my children want to talk to me, or whatever happens in life, how I'm going to react to it, right? Because I'm reacting from the place of this stress and reactivity, right? But again, you get to the point as you practice, you get to the point where you see the thoughts themselves, the emotion themselves, and the sensations themselves, right? You see these things leading from one to the other on a very small scale before it gets to this whole cycle, right? It's magical, folks. It's really, really magical. So I will be sitting there, again, in the shower, and all of a sudden I realize, like, I'm thinking about something that I haven't thought about in, maybe even years, right? But it's like this negative thing. And I say to myself, like, well, why am I thinking about that, right? And now I can just backtrack like 3 or 4 steps and say, oh, I thought about, my mother's birthday, and then I thought about my, my aunt, and then I thought about her child, my cousin, and the business that he's in. It's a shipping business. And then I thought about how the package that I ordered for my daughter hasn't arrived yet. And now I'm thinking about, the fact that I have to go to Target later. You know what I mean? Like, of course, this is just a silly example, but this is the way that you can develop this awareness, right? And now the really good news, folks, is that it doesn't take a lot of time, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort even, right? It takes just, just committing yourself and setting the intention to just develop this awareness. And it just kind of happens, because the beautiful thing about it is that this is the natural state, right, of our ability to see this happening within us is the natural state, right? And that's where I talk about with a lot of my clients. And actually, I like to not even call people clients these days. I call them co-creators, right? Because we're working together and we're creating something, right? And what we're creating is the ability not to add, right? It's not an additive process, this whole mindfulness and meditation, practice and the benefits that come from it. It's more like an peeling, like peeling an onion, right? Like the layers of an onion. You just keep peeling away, peeling away, peeling away, peeling away until you get to the heart, right? The heart. And now, when you're at the heart of things, now you can see things really, really clearly, right? Because what the onion is, right? All the layers that you have to get through, and the reason why you can't necessarily see what I'm talking about right now is the emotions and the the sort of pulling away from presence that the emotions tend to do, right? Again, like I talked about yesterday, when we're having an emotional reaction, right, we're focused on that. And then again, that influences the way our brain goes and the way we start thinking about things, right? And so as that happens, we are further and further away from the heart and from what is real, what is actually happening, right, within us and outside of us. And instead, we're in this place of just who knows where, right? And it can be someplace positive, right? There are times where you start thinking about very positive things, and one positive thought, it leads to another positive thought, leads to another positive thought, and that's really beautiful. And then you get into this good mood, and you don't even know why. But unfortunately, the way that our human brains and human systems are wired, we're almost always going to go to the negative. Okay, which brings me to another point about thinking, right? And this is something that's really interesting that I actually just started thinking about last night after I was listening to a lecture, and it occurred, just something that the person said really, made me think about this, that the person said that thinking requires memory, right? And if you think about that, it's pretty profound, right? So that, everything we experience, right, we experience inside our own nervous system, right? So that's why, I like to use the example of a dog, right? Like, so, you could have two people seeing the same dog, right? Person A, when he was little, he got bit by a dog, and that was the only real experience with a dog he ever had. Only one-on-one experience he ever had with a dog. The dog bit him. He had to go to the hospital and get stitches in his leg because of the dog bite, right? That person is going to feel a great amount of fear in their nervous system when they see this dog, right? Even if it's a beautiful, friendly-looking black lab with the tongue slobbering and just wants to lick and wag its tail, the person who has that negative experience as a child, that's the only memory they have, they're going to recoil from this dog, right? They're going to feel fear, and that's in their nervous system, right? But the person standing next to them, maybe she, as a child, woke up one morning and saw a black lab puppy under the Christmas tree, and wound up caring and loving this dog for 12 years of her life. She has nothing but positive memories about this dog. And now when she sees this dog, she's going to be attracted to it. She's going to be like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful dog. I want to pet this dog. I want him to lick my face. I want to nuzzle him and just hug him, right? Same dog, nothing's different, right? But the two people have vastly different experiences, right? Because of their memories, right? So and this happens with just about anything, right? That any thoughts that come to our mind, any emotions that come to our mind, and any physical sensation, they're all driven by the same nervous system that holds the memory of that dog holds the memory of the dog from your childhood, right? It also holds the memory of a mechanic at a bike shop who couldn't fix this noise, which, by the way, the other mechanic, I finally got to him and he fixed it like nothing, right? So which was very gratifying for me that I wasn't, just being unreasonable. The other mechanic was being unreasonable. But anyway, that's what happens, right? So the noise in my bicycle is something that exists in my nervous system. The noise is just a noise, right? And lots of bicycles make a noise, right? The noise is not what the problem was. The problem was the thoughts that were associated with that noise, which those thoughts were based on the memory that I have of this experience with the bike mechanic. Okay, because it didn't really affect the ability of the bicycle. I mean, I was riding it for weeks like this, right? It just made a kind of an unpleasant noise, right? But again, a noise that I found unpleasant, right? Other people might feel like, oh no, it's just a little squeak, it's no big deal. But to me, it's like, no, it's my bicycle. I need and again, that goes back to my early days where I always was an enthusiast of bicycles, and there were times where I had very good bicycles, and I know the difference between a squeaky noise and a bicycle that doesn't make a squeaky noise. And so again, that's in my memory, right? And so that is what my thoughts are based on. Right? And again, we can realize this when we do these practices and when we develop this awareness. And once we do that, right, the bottom line here, the beautiful thing here, is that now we have the choice. Right? Like while I'm sitting in the shower and I'm thinking, and I realize that I'm thinking about this bothersome thing, I can just say, oh, well, look, this happened because of all these different thoughts that led up to this, and now I have the choice. I can just let the thoughts go. I don't have to think about them. I don't have to, surrender myself to them. I can just think about something else, or I can just simply think about nothing, and I can listen to the sound of the shower. I can pay attention to the breathing of my body. I can, notice my feet on the floor. I can notice the beautiful blue sky with clouds off in the distance. I can sense the changing of the seasons. I can do a number of things, all of which are not this bothersome thought. So anyway, folks, I hope you enjoy that. I hope that is helpful to you, and I hope it inspires you to really try some of these practices, because again, you're talking about like a matter of a few weeks before you start getting into this. But just like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get at it, right? Like the more you ride a bicycle, the better. Soon you can ride with no hands. Soon you can ride really fast for a really long time. Soon you build skill out of it, right? And so, but very, very soon, right, within a couple of weeks, you're ready to take the training wheels off and really ride the bike. And so I hope I've inspired you to do that, and I hope that you, if you need help, I hope you reach out to me and let me know, because I would love to help you to get started in a meditation practice and a process that's going to lead you to all these benefits that I talk about. And ultimately, what's underneath all this is our happiness. Pardon me. It's funny that I got caught on that word. That what's underneath all this is our happiness, and that's really the ultimate goal here. That's the ultimate purpose of why we do this, right? Is because our happiness, our well-being, our satisfaction in our life is underneath all of this. That's at the middle of the onion. That's where the heart is. All right, so if you have any questions, or you would like any more information, or if you'd like some help figuring out how to get started in this, because a lot of times it is like looking at a blank page and having to write something. It's like, oh, I can't do it, right? Or trying to sing a song that you haven't heard for a while, until you hear that first line, it's like, I can't start, So if you want just that help to get started, I can certainly help you. We can co-create that together. So thanks for listening, and I wish you well, and I'm here for you if you need me. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.